There will be no personal nor direct attacks on anyone, and I would ask that you please try to keep down the loud cheering and the clapping. There will be no booing and no unruly behavior. With that,
this is painful, and it will be for a long time.
Donald Trump, baby! That's right, this man knows what's up!
After all, these are a couple of high-stepping turkeys, and you know what to say about a high-stepper. No step too high for a high-stepper.
This is Midday Mobile with Sean Sullivan on FM Talk 106.5.
Well, Sean's a tough guy. I mean, I think everybody knows that. You know, Sean, he took some licks. He hangs in there.
Yeah, what's wrong with the beer we got? I mean, the beer we got drank pretty good, don't it?
Did you hear what I said?
So this is a brave council. I had no doubt about them.
That doesn't suck.
If you don't like it, too bad.
Last question, were you high on drugs?
Last question, kiss my...
Right, here we go. FM Talk 106.5 and Midday Mobile. Glad to have you here on this Tuesday. It's also the second Tuesday of the month. That means we check in with Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran this hour. A couple things to get to as we get rolling. Congratulations to Auburn. Auburn Tigers heading to the College World Series out in Omaha. I heard the guys talking about it this morning, and Jeff as well. I got the note from Brad Law out there. And then I realized, talking to some family members, how many connections to the Auburn Tigers baseball team we have in Mobile. Because I was, talking to, we're pretty dense on the Crimson Tide side in my family. But I started hearing from family members going, oh, well, these people are going and these people are going to Omaha. What's the story with this? Well, it seems like there's a lot of connections there. So that's great. So it's a great story there. We'll watch that as well and give you updates right here on FM Talk 106.5. Also, coming up in hour number 2, Sergeant Young from the Mobile Police Department is going to join us again as we talk about the conversation we had a couple weeks ago with him and the gun crime, the chronic gun crime in our city. Once again, acute gun crime brings the discussions of Washington. But day in and day out, chronic gun crime is what affects our cities and our homes here in South Alabama and cities all over the country. So we'll have that conversation with him. We'll also have that conversation with Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran, who's in studio now. Good to see you.
Glad to be here, Sean.
That's a subject that you and I have talked about over time, that and with deference to, and as I say on there, those babies that were murdered in Uvalde. Okay,
yeah.
In deference to that. That brings the cameras, and they're outside the school, and they do the special cable news things, and then they start talking about what they're going to do in Washington. But day in and day out, the number of children killed in gun crime here and across the country is...
Yeah, we have that many killed in a week across the United States. That's
right.
Just happened in one day, but we have that many killed in a week.
And it's the nature of media. I get it, that they find the sensational headline. We do things a little differently around here. Not that we don't look at that headline, but we go, okay, what's the chronic issue? What's the thing? I can't help what happens in Uvalde, but I sure as heck can try to do everything I can to figure out what happens in Southwest Alabama.
Yeah. Well, it's the irresponsibility of a lot of people when it comes to managing or owning firearms.
Okay. And and I want to get to those, because getting guns... Illegal guns is this term that, when that's said, people will say, well, there's no such thing as an illegal gun. Let's say a stolen gun.
You're right.
Right. So stolen guns to get into the system. I want to get into that, how they get there. Also want to talk about some of the higher profile things going on right now with possible red flag laws, 21, moving in age to 21 to purchase at least semi-automatic rifles. I want to get to that. But before we do, something that last week, talking about chronic, as long as I've been doing this, living here, it seems like these stories happen in the summertime more than others. I don't have the stats in front of me, but there are children that will be shot with by some other child. Not on it's an accident. It's a mistake. It's not the out in the street violence. This is children that are at home nosing through closets and
get access to guns that are, and I say irresponsible people that leave guns out where children can get a hold of them, and they're amazed by firearms because they see it on TV, they see it on the internet. And, I shared an example with you earlier before we went on thing that I can remember when I was 5 years old, maybe. I pulled my dad's drawer out on the bottom of the chest of drawers because I wasn't tall enough to reach up and stand on that drawer and open the top drawer. And he had a pistol in the very top drawer out of my reach, but I figured out how to get to it. And I just stroked my hand across it just to touch it. Now, at least I was scared enough, but I did get access to it.
Right, and and I've said this last week. It's like a parenting advice thing, but If you think there's something in your house your children will never find, like that, you're wrong. Especially when they're home for a summer or whatever, and they don't have.
Look, when Christmas time comes, you go through every closet in the house.
Try to find the presents, yes. So the kids will find this, and you and I are both guys that have safes and have firearms and safes. But I also realize that's not for everybody, depending on where they live, the cost of a safe, those things. I mean, I'm a fan of them, but that's not for everybody. So last week with this tragedy of the death of this 3-year-old, I started thinking about these cable locks, these gun locks that I have. I've got them in an ice cream bucket thing. Because when we get firearms, they come with it.
One comes in it.
Yeah.
It gets in your way when you shut the case.
Right. So you
give it a toss.
So I've got those because I guess I'm a hoarder and haven't gotten rid of them. And when I heard about this child, I was motivated to say I would give away every one I have to somebody out there to lock out mechanisms on guns. Then start talking with y'all. This is something the Sheriff's Department has done in the past.
Yes, we've given them out. We can obtain them for free,
okay.
And we distribute them out if somebody wants one. All we got to do is come by the sheriff's office, come into our front lobby, and we'll give them to them. It's a little lock with a key, and it has about a 10 or 12 inch wire.
So the action,
and you put it through there. It's real simple to lock down a pistol or to lock down a rifle or shotgun.
Yeah, so the action won't work. And there's it depends, like, for example, if you had a bolt-action rifle, there's an actual trigger lock because you can't get through the mechanism. But if you have a semi-automatic of any side that you can come in through the top of the action, out the bottom of it, you now have rendered that gun so the action can't close, and it's safe. They may wallop each other with them, but that's about it.
Exactly. It's real simple and very simple little device. And I don't know who manufacturing Firearms of America or something like that.
I get them with like different manufacturers, like whatever the gun I may or may not have purchased. It's like it's branded for Ruger, it's branded for H&K, or it's branded.
And I'm sure it's a liability too thing when they sell the gun, they give it in your box, and so they say, okay, we provide you the weapon so you can be safe with it. But
it's a pretty simple, Sheriff. It's a pretty simple thing. I mean,
it is. But now it's not a. But if you got one of them and somebody's breaking in on you, you don't really have time to do that. So that's why I have a safe full of guns.
Yes.
And I've got a gun in my side table by the bed and one on the top of it. Now, if the grandkids come over, I'll make sure my bedroom door is shut and closed and they can't get into my bedroom. Of course, I'll take the pistol off the top of the shelf and at least put it in the drawer, but my bedroom is still locked or shut.
Right.
And I'm just responsible that way.
And if you had them in the home, for hours and hours and hours in the summertime, if you're keeping grandchildren,
you need to lock them up for sure with something like this.
So you talked about those, and this is something. So conversations we've had, y'all have them. We're going to have them. We're going to work with y'all to do events here. This is a mission for us for going forward, but for this year for sure, with FM Talk 106.5 and Mobile County Sheriff's Department, to get these locks in y'all's hands.
These guns. If you don't have a gun safe and all your guns are not locked up, you certainly need your guns to be.
Yeah, I mean, how many folks am I talking to here? Whether your parents or the grandparents keeping the kids for the summertime?
That the parents have to go to work and drop the kids off at the grandparents' house. So we're really speaking to, quite frankly, our grandparents are the audience we really need to speak to.
Yeah. So and y'all are listening to this. We'll be letting you know moving forward when we have them, but you'll be able to stop by with the sheriff's office or events we have, or even here at the studio we'll have them, and get those to y'all so you can go and listen. They're very simple. Yeah, but they just lock out the mechanism on that gun, and it takes like 2 seconds to do this.
That's right.
You can still leave them leaning in a closet. It doesn't matter once they're like that. Like I said, other than them bludgeoning each other with them, we remove that danger. So that's great. So this is something we're going to work forward on during the summer, and let y'all know when there's events you can pick those up. All right, so much to talk about beyond that. I do want to let me quickly do this because I saw this on y'all's Facebook page before we get into the guns and all those stories. 51,000. I saw the thing y'all are hiring. This was. I was trolling along. I mean, I've been doing radio for a while, but I may bow out. You got my attention with that. Pretty good incentive here to get on with it.
Talking about our corrections officers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've raised the pay over the last few years, steadily increased it, gave them additional incentives, other incentives to where if they take the job, that's what they begin making. And, of course, that's with all kinds of benefits. Health insurance and life insurance, and so many paid holidays a year, so many paid sick days a year.
I didn't realize. I mean, I got to be frank. I didn't realize that was a salary. So when I saw that on the Facebook page, it got my attention.
Well, we're still hiring. We have lots of openings, and it's a tough job, but we give you the proper training, and if you follow the rules, and there are a lot of rules, but you have to follow them. But it's a good job.
All right. So, yeah, y'all check that out on the I just wanted to give everybody else a heads up because I saw that and I said, wow, I didn't realize that was the salary for that job. All right. So, obviously, a lot to talk about in the wake of where we are here at home with, I'll call them babies, a 14-year-old and 11-year-old in the city of Mobile.
Yeah, within a couple of days.
Yeah, a couple of days. Dead. Maybe children. Let alone the national discussion going on right now. And from your mind, all the decades in law enforcement, a couple of things. First of all, let's talk about access to guns. And we talked about the situation when do you have any percentages of how many guns are used in crimes around here are stolen versus how many are bought firsthand or law? I mean,
the majority of guns are probably stolen that are used in crimes. I mean, we're at this perfect collision right now, and that's what we're seeing here and across the country. We've had so many guns stolen in the last few years. We've had so many guns additionally sold after, quite frankly, it goes back to President Obama being elected. People thought he was going to do away with guns, and it just created this mad rush, and thousands of guns started being sold. And the more guns that are sold, obviously, the more guns out there to steal. And so, as I've said before on the show, we've had several thousand, maybe 10,000 guns stolen in the last several years in Mobile out of unlocked cars.
10,000.
Yeah. And so we've got all those guns floating around in the hands of criminals. So criminals don't have to go pay $700 or $800 for a gun. They've just got one that they stole several years ago, or a buddy stole it and gave them because he had several of them. So those guns are in the hands of criminals, and that's what we're seeing, this perfect storm as violence increases and as this gun culture that we see, or subculture in some of our community has increased, all these guns, and it leads to people shooting and killing each other. And, it's not a large segment of our community, a small segment, but they're so prolific in violence. Just as you spoke about the 11-year-old, and if you follow the news closely, the father of the 11-year-old that was shot and killed, well, he's in our jail for a double murder in Pritchard. So, that was retribution, and then he got stabbed or shanked in our jail, and
that's what I was going to ask you. But yeah.
He's in the hospital now, and of course we've got to, we call it KSF, I think, keep safe from others or something. So we have to manage our prisoners where you've got there's just in these last shootings in Mobile and these murders, there's probably 3, 4, 5 families. It involves those, and somebody kills one in that family, then they turn around and kill somebody in that family, and then they turn around and kill somebody in that family.
It's Hatfields and McCoys.
Yeah, except it's deadly, and so we're dealing with them in the jail. The city is dealing with them in the streets, and it's again it's generational crime that's within a few. At the end of the day, it's not that many families.
Yes, but it's affecting.
Because you get a stray bullet, just like the 11-year-old was not meant for the 11-year-old,
in his house.
Yes, I think if I read it correctly, was putting something in the microwave and a bullet came in and killed him.
I mean, doing what kids just not doing anything trouble. I mean, in his house.
Yeah, I saw on the news this morning where somebody was in a parking lot and took a bullet through the windshield or something. Said there was 2 groups of people shooting at each other, and they're just innocently there. So, this fantasy and fanaticism with weapons and guns it's a culture, and it's got to change. Is something in my brain, like I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if this is backed up in the stats or it's just me. Well, I recollect it was different. We've always had crimes. We've always had murders and gun culture to some degree in this country. Was there a time when they took it out where they didn't take it out amongst, houses? And or am I picturing something that's not true? No, it's clearly changed. The culture has changed. When I was a teenager,
there's still bad dudes.
There's still bad dudes, and people drove around with pickup trucks, and they had these gun racks in the pickup truck, and you still had fist fights and everything, but the guns were in the truck. No one ever got the guns out and started shooting. They had fisticuffs.
Right.
And then the thieves came along and started stealing the guns out of trucks.
Oh, yeah, when they're displayed.
So they did away with the truck mounts, gun mounts for trucks.
That's just advertising.
I don't think you could find one on the market now because nobody's going to buy one because you put a truck.
Yeah, you'd be stolen.
Exactly.
But, I mean, even in the shooting portion of it, and maybe it's this idea like something from some old mob movie or something where they took it was the men were okay, men versus men, and if this sounds sexist, y'all, so it is. But they kept it away from families. They may kill dad, may kill brother, may kill uncle, but the code of the bad guy was that was that ever real, or am I imagining something?
No, I think it was real.
Okay.
And, but again, times have changed. And
now it seems like they don't care. There's cars with, over here on Bel Air Boulevard, you had a 5-year-old in the car and just shooting.
Yeah, it's a change. Times change. I guess we're always changing. Of course, many of our laws that prohibit certain types of weapons go back to the early days of
the gangsters, right?
Gangsters and stuff. That's why they outlawed. Some of the laws are on the books now about not having concealed weapons in vehicles, not having automatic weapons, because the gangsters were so prolific driving around shooting up each other. They outlawed guns, but now we've since come full circle and unoutlawed those guns in cars.
All right, we're coming back. We'll talk more about that. Yeah, the status of concealed carry permits. Also, I want to talk about red flag laws. Get your opinion on that they're talking about in Washington. Plus, school security. How many times over the last couple of weeks I said, the sheriff and I have talked about this over the years of arming officers, deputies of some sort at Mobile County Public Schools. It seems like there's somewhat of a change of heart. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. Grab your calls, too, when we come back. All right, welcome back. Midday Mobile on this Tuesday, second Tuesday of the month, and our chance to talk to Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran, and your chance to ask the sheriff as well. We'll get to your phone calls here. Let me quickly run through just a couple texts here. Tim says, I think the city needs to pass out belts to the parents to straighten up their children's problems. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Unnamed texter here said, people don't leave money laying around or jewelry, so lock up your firearms. Do not leave them in your automobiles. Chris says, Sheriff, if there was a new law passed today on gun control, would it deter any crime?
Certainly gun control laws would deter crime, but it would also deter your constitutional rights. So that's what we do in public policy, is try to find that middle ground, a balance where you try not to take away too many of their rights while protecting the rest of the people.
But where do we balance that seesaw out?
Well, that's what we've been fussing about for the last 15, 20 years on the Second Amendment. Second Amendment is not unlimited, and the Supreme Court has said that many times. It's not absolute, so there are provisions and restrictions. That's where the argument comes in. As I've said on the show before, the great Supreme Court justice said, it's not absolute. You do have limits, just like First Amendment. You can't holler fire in a theater, and freedom of religion. We don't have human sacrifices. And the Second Amendment, we have certain restrictions, and one of those restrictions is it gives the authority of states to pass restrictions on carrying weapons and stuff. And for many years, you had to have a concealed carry permit where you had a background check. Of course, that's been removed by our legislatures.
I wanted to ask you about that's still in effect till January, right?
So January 1, you still have to have a concealed carry permit.
Even our governor seemed confused about that. So it is still the law till January 1st.
Until January 1st, you have to have it concealed on your person or in your vehicle.
All right, let's go to the phones here. Robert is in Sims. You're on with Sheriff Cochran.
Hey, Sean, thanks for taking my call. I have a question for the sheriff, and I commend him for making himself available to the public. My idea is based on a video that's on YouTube that he may have seen called Welcome to the Village. Now, I guess that's the worst part of Pritchard. I believe it's in Pritchard.
Alabama Village.
Yeah. I've seen that video.
Have you ever seen that video?
Yes, sir, I have.
We got to do this. I'll tell you what, Robert. I didn't watch my time right. Hold on, because this is the hard break here coming up for the news. I've got to hold on, Robert. We'll come to you right off the jump when we get back from news.
You're listening to Midday Mobile with Sean Sullivan on FM Talk 106.5. Call Sean now at 343-0106.
All right, so sorry about that. We'll get back to our call with Robert. Robert, you'd think after pushing 30 years doing this, I'd know when the bottom of the hour break was going to get to me, but I didn't. So thanks for holding on.
I appreciate it. Sheriff, I have an idea that you may have a dozen reasons you can't do it or whatever. I'm going to use the best words I have, and feel free to correct me. What would be wrong, and I think it's a great idea personally, to put a substation right in the middle of the nastiest street where the crime is in Alabama Village. And in the 80s and 90s, you probably lived through some of this. I used to see them around back when it was safe to go in a convenience store. You'd see a deputy or a policeman with a multi-jurisdictional windbreaker was the thing then. Unit, and then have a
Jags?
Jaguar,
yeah,
or whatever.
Jaguars, yeah.
And just open up. They did this. I've never served in the military. I'm just telling you what I read. They did this in Vietnam. They put a fire base right in the middle of a well-known area. So why could you not open a substation just, right in the middle of it? And it might empower the local, you got sheriffs out there in Pritchard, I'm sure, and deputies and Pritchard police, but it might empower those people if they know if they get in trouble, they got a dozen or more agents around the corner, heavily armed. You need to go to the gun locker and give these people the good stuff. Is that possible to do that and just take the business to them?
We've done that over the years. It's been tried several times, and it works, but it eventually you don't keep all the police officers in the precinct. You got to still send them out to ride their beats. But quite frankly, I was the first commander of the Josephine Allen Housing Project precinct when Chief Johnson came to town and signed me out there. We left to close up that night. We come back, and they had firebombed it. Thankfully, they had grill on the windows, but we kept it open for a couple of years, and it made a difference in the we'd called it Happy Hills, but it was Josephine Allen. Then we had a precinct in the Roger Williams project, and it worked. Our officers would get to know the people in the community, and I can't quite honestly say how or why we phased out. Of course, those two housing projects have since closed up. But
well, let's dust that plan off again, because things we 10 minutes from being Atlanta.
Well,
and if you could, like I said, just go where they are, and keep it open all night. Have a man out in the yard, with a floodlight. I'm talking about like a 24-hour a day. We're here to keep the peace, and we got the stuff to do.
You remind me of a lot of things, and it brings back, but it boils down to manpower and money. And I was in the riots of the Roger Williams when they were firebombing us that day, and I ran up and arrested somebody, and the whole crowd attacked us, and it turned into a all-night 3 or 4 day things with fires and shots. And when
was that?
That was in 19. I'm trying to think. Let's see, 90. I can't. 1990, 91. We had a shooting at a lounge across the street, and it erupted in riots in Roger Williams, and we responded, and me and about 7 or 8 officers stood a crowd of about 300 people off, and then shots started firing. I had a rookie standing beside me. We jumped behind our car, and of course, when I get nervous, I laugh. And I said, "Hey, you liking this?" And he just was white as a ghost. And of course, I positioned us behind the engine block of the car,
right,
until we got more reinforcements. But yeah, it did help create community relations and build informants. But times have just changed, and monies are different, and strategies are different, and now we do what maybe it's called intelligence-led policing and stuff. But again, having a precinct there does not stop the crime. You've got to have the officers on the ground there all the time to build those relationships.
Robert, appreciate the call. Before we get to the next call, I do want to ask you about this because it's a subject I've talked about quite a bit since Uvalde, but you and I have talked about it over the decade. And that is armed officers. Now, Baldwin County schools have this, certain schools in Mobile County, but Mobile County public school system has not had armed SROs or anybody else there.
Some reason or another, about 16 years ago, some ruling by the state superintendent and then the local superintendent disarmed our resource officers in the school system. At that time, most of them, if not all of them, were former law enforcement officers, and they were allowed to carry weapons, and they did firearms training every year, but then they were disarmed. When I was elected sheriff, the then head of the school resource program came to me, and I told him I would be happy to deputize all of the school resource officers to where they could then carry a gun. But the then superintendent, and I can't remember which one it was.
Was it Dr. Crenshaw at that point?
No, he was on the board. He was.
Oh, you're talking about at the SRO?
Yeah, the head of the superintendent of Mobile County School System. Okay. It was the guy, I think, that preceded Harold Dodge. I can't remember, Nichols maybe, said no. And they tried. And so now several years have gone by. And still many of the ones that are resource officers are former law enforcement officers. I don't think all of them are. But I fully support having an armed officer. In fact, I have an upcoming meeting to discuss that very thing.
Well, it sounds like opinions, at least in some
it's
couple
changing
stories
now,
I read.
I've saw Dr. Crenshaw says
yeah.
it's time to reinstate that. And I know Johnny Hatcher's been on this show, and I think he'd be for it. And, and I'm going to propose. I'm getting out ahead of myself here on your show.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. I'm going to propose over time that we assign, an armed deputy at every school in the county. And, of course, I don't have the funding for it. The school system, if they came up with it, we could do it. And the benefit of it was you could put a deputy at each school for about 3 years, and then you phase them out, and put another deputy in there.
Okay.
A seasoned deputy. And so what you would have, it would be tremendously beneficial for us to have a deputy that has spent time learning all these kids learning these kids, and basically after a period of time, you'd have and I'm going to use his name. He won't mind, I don't think. We'd have 25 Jack Tillmans. They would all say, I know that guy.
Yeah.
And they like that guy, and they respect that guy. And they say, I want to be like Mr. Tillman and become a deputy sheriff one day. And so, it's a part of the experience of a deputy
It's working
sheriff.
both ways there.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be tremendously beneficial for us. And then in the summertime, when we may have our most busiest time of the year and time when most deputies take vacations and stuff, we'd have the excess number of deputies. So
they could be used back in with
it'd be a win-win situation. So I wanted to explore that. Now it'd be tough because it's hard to hire police officers and deputy sheriffs, but we could phase that in, and then the school system wouldn't have to hire somebody that, these type crimes change, and we used to have skyjackings of airplanes. Well, when's the last time we had one of those? You don't. So when times change, and I think in another several years we won't have shootings at schools. So then if you hired
pray the Lord you're right.
30 or 40 additional school resource officers that are armed, one day they may not need that many. Well, we can phase them out.
There's a place for them to go
into the system. But I just like the idea of not having a guy that stays at a school for 15, 20 years. They need to see something different. And you need to move somebody in that's been on the streets and knows how to handle themselves.
Already has the training.
It's just it's a perfect situation.
I'm glad to hear you bring that back up because we had talked about it in the past. I support that move. I think a lot of us here support that move.
You have a deputy that's been on the streets, has fought criminals for 3 or 4 years. Now you assign him to the school. If an armed guy comes in, he's faced armed guys before, whereas a school resource officer may have never faced an armed guy in their career. But this deputy has, and hopefully would do the right thing and not what they did out in Texas and sit outside and not confront the gunman.
That was my next question. The policy, and I kind of had an insight because you put me through some of the training that the officers go through for active shooters years ago. I went out and trained with y'all. What is the policy?
Well, to immediately go in, to confront the gunman. We know that in 75, 80% of the cases where there's an armed shooter, an active shooter, when you go in and confront them, 80% of them kill themselves.
Yep.
It's weird. I think they don't want to be killed by the police. They want to kill themselves. And so the quicker you go in, obviously it's going to draw it to a head, and it's going to be over with.
Y'all's policy is not to wait. Your policy is to get there and go in.
Wait. Right. Our policy, and we train that way. And
people who have children here listening to you, the sheriff, the policy here is that you go in.
We go in, and I know all of the officers in Mobile County sheriffs and the Mobile Police Department, they've all trained that, and I think the other cities have too. They've trained, 2 or 3 officers to go in immediately. If no one else, 1 officer will go in. But if 3 are available, they go in, and they go in a certain formation, and they've trained how to enter the rooms and stuff like that, and to confront the gunner.
There we go. Let's go to Larry in Mobile. You're on with Sheriff Cochran. Hey, Larry?
Well, Sean, is a little off topic now. I was going to say with the mafia thing, like my family's from New Orleans, and the story of a story that, like, my dad's cousin, was a shitty guy, and they wanted to kill him.
Okay, we're gonna have to drop you there on that because I can't have that. Can't have that. So we'll have to maybe tell the story another time. All right. gives me time to ask this one too. So we mentioned it earlier. Red flag laws.
Yes.
Okay. This comes up. This out of the things that were listed that the Senate's agreed on. This one probably brings up the most discussion. We can get to the age in a second. But you support them?
I definitely support them. And Shane, I was listening to you, and I think it was Cameron a week or so ago on here talking to you. And he was talking about, man, these people, they usually, before shooting like this, they throw red flags or something. And I was sitting there listening. I said, man, you're making my point. And all of a sudden when he said red flags, he said, wait a minute. I'm not necessarily saying I support red flag laws. But I'm thinking, right. I started to call you, say, Sean, you and Cameron just made the case for red flags. So it's when a guy is making statements that he's going to go shoot somebody up, shoot a place up, and all like that. Those are red flags. And so that's when law enforcement should be notified and can act upon it. So,
but I think people worry about the shade of red for this. Okay, well, I mean, we can paint an extreme side. If a guy says, "I'm going to go shoot up a school," it come down on him like a ton of bricks. But the idea that people's mental state, or I mean, you see how this could be used politically. That the people they don't like say the things they don't like.
The opponents are going to say red flag laws are nothing but a way for the government to take away your rights, your gun rights.
You disagree with that?
Yeah, I disagree with it because, look, as a police officer, I can arrest you and I can put you in jail based on probable cause and hold you for 72 hours without even taking you before a judge.
Right.
So I've already took away your freedom. So the red flag law is based on probable cause, and there's two ways we're going. Either you get probable cause and get a judge to issue a warrant to seize the weapons, or you have probable cause, you seize the weapons, and then you have to go to a judge and get a seizure warrant for those weapons. Something that we do now with your body physically, we take away that right of freedom. And so I don't understand how we can do, on the one hand, take you to
physical
jail,
freedom away,
but yet only taking your guns away temporarily until a judge rules that you shouldn't have them. And many of these people say mental illness, and that's what's wrong with this federal thing is they're stressing the mental illness. Well, many of these shooters are not mentally ill. They're not mentally ill. They're mean as hell. They're mad as hell, but if you were to take him before a judge for a commitment, they'd say, nope, he's not mentally ill. So the red flag law is what's going to make the difference, not the mental illness. But now, hey, let them put a bunch of funding in mentally ill in the states, because we've talked about that many times. We need more funding for mental health.
All right, we're coming right back. More with Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran. He's our guest. It's your chance to ask the sheriff right here on FM Talk 106.5. Right, welcome back. Midday Mobile, FM Talk 106.5. And your chance to ask the sheriff, Mobile County Sheriff Sam Cochran, our guest. I want to run through a lot of these texts in here. Gary says, put veterans at all schools. Not all of us are old and disabled. Gary, most of the vets I'm buddies, well, there's I got an older contingent of buddies that are vets, but those guys my age, we're not old. We're just pushing 50. Maximus says, stop the killing. Matthew says Jack Tillman, before he was sheriff, was school resource officer at Murphy High School. Another one, Sheriff Jack Tillman was the SRO. He was tough but fair, earned my respect. Great pillar of our community. Thanks, Sheriff's Department. Thanks, Sheriff Cochran, for your service. Rick says, based on what the sheriff has said, if a person states they're going to shoot the school up and law enforcement is notified, can't they just arrest the person for 72 hours instead of seizing the guns? I'll stop at that one.
Well, you could arrest him for a misdemeanor offense, and he could make bond immediately and go home and get the guns and go do what he said he was going to do. The guy's troubled. What we want to do is just take the guns away from him so he can't, and then have a hearing and address it that way.
We can devil's advocate this to death. I could say that then some other gun that y'all.
That's true, and that can happen, but it's at least just highlighted the situation, and sometimes when, if you arrest somebody or take the guns away, the family may get involved, and a lot of times the family calls people and says, look, I'm telling you, my son's going to go shoot somebody if you don't do something, and he's got guns, and so he's not making the threats, but the family's telling you that.
Right.
So then you go seize the guns and bring the family to court and hear what the family says about what he's been saying around the house. What he's
not
do.
on social media.
Right, not on social media.
Hal says red flag laws make you guilty until you can prove your innocence. An ex-spouse could falsely accuse a person of anger or mental issues after an argument just to be spiteful.
Well, that's the way our criminal justice system works. If somebody swears under oath that someone's committed a crime or has done that, they can be arrested for that. And of course, we have laws we refer to simply called false arrest. If you make a false allegation and cause me to be arrested, then I bring a civil suit against you and sue you for damages. Again, that's the way our system works. Now, oftentimes people that make statements don't have anything to sue them for. They don't, you sue them, you win, and they have nothing to take from
no
it.
blood in the turnip.
That's right.
Okay. This last one here, I think, this is from Drewski, and he says, red flag laws are great until the people controlling them decide you're a terrorist for believing 5-year-olds shouldn't attend drag shows or have gender reassignment surgery. Reference the FBI and the Virginia PTA. When you give the government a power, it'll eventually be abused. IRS targeting conservative organizations. I mean, that's kind of like, those are some specifics from Drewski, but my general one is, my worry is, if you knew you had an omnipotent, good decision maker on the red flag, it'd be one thing, but people worry about how it could be abused.
That's why it's so important when we go to the ballot box to elect the right people and to be informed and involved in your government. I mean, what we spoke of earlier in this show was that it's a balance. Constitutional rights are not unlimited, and there's got to be an even balance, and then that balance is where you justify these things.
All right, grab one. We probably have time for one more phone call. Damon is in Mobile. You're on with Sheriff Cochran.
Oh, thanks for taking my call. I just want to quickly ask the sheriff if he's aware of the growing problem of ghost guns. I saw where they apprehended people in a basement somewhere, mass producing ghost guns, because they're afraid of the gun control legislation, and they're just cranking them out by the hundreds in basements on the Northeast somewhere. Is there a way to put a heavier penalty on making your own ghost gun?
That's being heavily debated at the national level with ATF and I think regulations. They propose regulations, and it takes a while for their regulations to take effect. But I think that may be being discussed in this proposed legislation now.
Yeah, it was one of the items. I don't know if it was a for sure part.
There's a lot of discussion on it, and what you're saying I've not heard of. But quite frankly, I've not seen reliably where ghost guns have been a problem, but it's really stirred up.
Have y'all
I know
confiscated a ghost gun around here?
Not that I know of, not that I'm aware. And I just think it's overplayed in the media about ghost guns, and it's part of that internet mystique.
Because you sit in here and tell me what we're dealing with, and and I'm going to talk to Sergeant Young from Mobile Police Department in the next hour. What I hear from all y'all, it's stolen guns. That's what we're dealing with, not ghost guns.
That the people don't have the serial numbers, or stolen guns that people never report it to us. Because if you have your car unlocked, somebody steals a gun out, Sean, you're probably not going to call the police because you're going to be embarrassed. Like, officer, I hate to tell you, but I left my car unlocked. I left a gun in my car. And then on top of that, you're not going to have a serial number. So what's the use? Save your embarrassment.
Yeah.
So amongst the thousands of guns that we do know that were stolen,
you said 10,000 probably.
Oh yeah, that's what we've estimated over the last several years between the city and the county over the last 10 years. And those guns are floating around, and that's what's being used in many of these crimes.
All right. Before we wrap up, people want to get more information, whether it is a question about who's in jail or anything else going on, or people looking for those corrections officers' jobs at $51K.
Yeah.
Download
our app, Team Sheriff. Go to our website, mobileso.com. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. And we sure would like to hire a bunch of corrections officers. It's a good, challenging job, and we also still are hiring deputies.
All right, y'all check that out. And once again, thank you for partnering. This is going to be good going forward.
Sure.
Like if y'all didn't hear at the beginning of the show, what I lamented about last week with the death of that 3-year-old down in Grand Bay, locking the mechanisms on these guns out so they cannot be shot. That was an air rifle, I know, but it's 22 caliber air rifle. Locking these mechanisms out. We're going to work with the Sheriff's Department to distribute these locks through the community. So grandparents, anybody, you got kids coming in your house, make sure you have those guns rendered safe.
Sounds great, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Be right back. Hour number 2 of Midday Mobile.